It says Psalm 19 is on Von Braun's gravestone. Every ancient culture knew the earth was flat. Norse, Aztec, Hindu. Well, the Aztecs definitely were astronomers. I've never come across anything in Aztec culture saying it was flat. But he says that the yin and yang symbol is a ancient symbol for the flat earth. Now, the question I've got, Dave, to kick off this part of the show is if we're living on a flat Earth, is there a dome over the top of us like the Truman Show?
I personally believe there is.
Okay.
Others don't.
And how high? What is the altitude? So that if you go straight up, how high would you have to go before you hit that dome?
Okay, well, again, there's a lot of speculation here because I've never gone up there myself, so I don't know. But I personally believe that there is a dome. I don't know how high that actual dome, the solid dome is. But there was a rocket that went up a couple of years ago called the Go Faster rocket, and you can find that on YouTube. And this rocket went up, I believe, 75 miles. And it's very difficult to watch the footage because it's got 7 cameras on it, and the rocket was spinning very, wildly as it was going up.
Yeah.
And while it was going up, it hit the 75-mile mark and suddenly stopped. It kind of hit something. Now, it couldn't have been something solid, otherwise it would have been utterly destroyed. Because its forward motion was still moving very quickly as it was going up. It was also spinning wildly, and the rotational movement stopped, the forward motion stopped, and the rocket fell back to the Earth. Now it's interesting.
It wouldn't fall back from 75 miles. It would go. It'd re-enter the atmosphere and burn up.
Well, no, but that's funny because the space shuttle, when it drops its external tank much higher than 75 miles, it doesn't burn up.
No, the space shuttle drops its tanks before the tanks are dropped just on the edge of the atmosphere, which is 6.5 miles.
Oh, you're saying it drops its tank at 6.5 miles up?
Yeah, or less.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting because obviously the external tank has all the fuel for the space shuttle. After that, all it has. Yeah,
the solid boosters, which were actually designed by Jack Parsons, by the way. He is the designer of solid fuel. He's the pioneer of solid fuel. Those are the tall, thin rockets.
I know.
I've seen those in real life. You can go and see them at the Kennedy Space Center, and also in Florida. You can actually see the aircraft carrier that actually goes off and collects those tanks because they're refurbished. Those ones are attached on the side, and they're dropped off fairly early. And then the big tank in the middle is dropped when it's empty.
Right. The big tank. The space shuttle has 5 engines. Yeah. 2 solid rocket boosters and 3 rockets on the back of the space shuttle. The external tank has the fuel for those 3 rockets. Okay.
It does in launch mode, but when the space shuttle goes into orbit, they're basically using liquid. They're using liquid oxygen, and they only need the fuel for the retro rockets. They don't actually use the big the really big engines at the back of the shuttle until it's time for them to do a readjustment for landing.
Well, actually, after the external tank separation, it uses something called an ohms burn, which is the orbital maneuvering system. Yeah. And that is supposedly there to insert the space shuttle into orbit. Okay. So now what you're telling me is that the tank is dropped at 6.5 miles, which I'll go into disproving in a second. You're saying it drops at 6.5 miles, and somehow this orbiting maneuvering system, which doesn't have the same amount of fuel as the external tank had,
That's right.
somehow drives that space shuttle the remaining 250 or 249 miles, up to the ISS.
Right. Well, the shuttle used to orbit in low Earth orbit, which is about 330 miles.
No, low Earth orbit starts at 99 miles, extends
it
to
does. It starts then.
1,200 miles. The ISS is at 250 miles.
Yeah, well, the space shuttle never used to go beyond 350 miles.
I never said it did.
Well, I didn't say you did.
Right, but what I'm saying, is, anyone can go onto YouTube right now and find a video of the space shuttle taking off as seen from an aircraft at 35,000 feet. Yeah, the space shuttle goes way above that plane. And that plane is only 7 miles up. So if it goes way beyond...
No, 35,000 feet isn't 7 miles.
It's 7 miles.
Okay, I'll have to have a look at it. You've got airliners, they cruise at around 33,000 feet.
Okay, and 35,000 feet is 7 miles up.
Okay, and then you've got the edge of the atmosphere, which is where Concorde used to actually go, which is about 55,000 feet.
Concorde maximum cruise altitude is 60,000 feet.
Yeah, that's what I said. Most of the time it was around 55,000 feet.
Okay.
The only terrestrial aircraft that have ever gone higher on a routine kind of basis was Blackbird.
Mm-hmm. SR-71, which is 70,000 feet.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And then basically the air molecules are already so thin and so rare at 70,000 feet that the Blackbird is actually basically on the fringe of space anyway.
Well, this is not what we're talking about, right? What we're talking about is you saying, hang on.
I'd like to my question, how high up is this dome?
Right. Well, I did explain to you, and let me
finish. You think it's around 75 miles?
I'm saying there is some kind of barrier which is not necessarily physical that prevents anything from going higher than that. There is a dome that I believe is much higher than that, but we can't get there because I think the limit of where we can go is 75 miles. Okay. And that is why all trajectories of rockets and the space shuttle all curve below that 75-mile mark.
Right. Okay. Well, what I would say to you is that if you have an object like that homemade rocket on YouTube, and
not it goes a homemade rocket.
Well, if it's any kind of rocket, and it goes up to 75 miles, it's in space.
No, it's not. Low Earth orbit starts at 99 miles.
Yeah, but the atmosphere's finished though, Dave.
So that's actually one of the questions that...
the atmosphere...
that is one of the questions I ask in one of my videos, actually. Where does space actually begin? Because nobody seems to really know where this space actually begins. The
pilots of Blackbird know because they have to wear kind of spacesuits in the cockpit of the Blackbird.
Right, but as I said, you just said that the space shuttle drops its tank at 6.5 miles up, which is below the flight limit of most commercial airliners.
Yeah.
Well, it's not, because in which case the space shuttle needs somehow to find the fuel.
Yeah, it does have fuel. It does have some fuel on board. Yeah.
To blast it nearly more than 200 miles into well into orbit.
Yeah, but once you're in 0 G, you need very, very little thrust to actually travel a very long distance.
There is no such thing as 0 G. What you're calling 0 G is known as microgravity. It's not a state of weightlessness. It is the fact, supposedly, this idea that you're going fast enough so that your curvature towards the Earth, according to gravity, is less shallow than the actual curve of the Earth. So you end up spinning around the Earth trying to fall towards it. So there's no such thing as zero gravity.
Well, even when you're thousands